$46,000. And she never told me? Was the woman he loved hiding money?
He has the same look Daddy used to have. I'm scared, Mama. Did you get everything ready the way I told you last?
Year? They planned this for a year?
Don't come near me!
Are you afraid of my nightmare or afraid of me? Renata, what is that?
I'm scared I'll repeat my mother's life.
I have never once hurt you.
I pushed my daughter away from you because you reminded me of her father.
You knew I paid for your Sandry.
Keep watching the story and follow Mr. Marcus Stories for more powerful moments.
My name is Marcus Delaney. I am 43 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed one thing without question. A good man doesn't announce what he carries. He just carries it. That belief got me through 11 years in the Army as a combat engineer. Through 2 tours where I learned exactly how much weight a man's back can hold before it gives. It got me through 19 years of marriage to a woman I loved more than my own comfort. It's also the belief that nearly cost me that marriage. And it took a folding chair in a hospital hallway in Pittsburgh to teach me the difference between strength and silence. Some nights, long after Renata had fallen asleep beside me, I would lie awake replaying the quiet parts of those deployments. Not the explosions, the stillness before them, the sound of gravel under my own boots at 4 in the morning, half a world from any bed I recognized. I never described those sounds to my wife. I told myself that keeping them out of our house was the same thing as protecting her from them. I understand now, those were never the same thing at all. On a Thursday afternoon in late June, I sat in my office on the 11th floor of a construction management firm overlooking the Monongahela River, holding a pen over divorce papers my lawyer had drawn up 4 days earlier. On my desk was a signed contract for a bridge inspection project worth $211,600, the largest single job I had ever closed. Folded in my shirt pocket was the reason I'd called that lawyer in the first place. A bank statement I'd found 9 days before for an account I never knew existed. My wife's name was on it. So was a balance of $46,819. Sit with that for a second. A man who spent 2 decades reading terrain for danger. And I never saw this one coming. Not even a little. But here's the part that still keeps me up some nights. That account wasn't the strangest thing I found that week. It wasn't even the saddest. Before I tell you how I ended up staring at those papers, let me take you back to the Tuesday evening it all started, because by the time I called that lawyer, my wife had already been planning her exit for a lot longer than I understood. I just didn't know it yet. Pittsburgh does something in early summer where the humidity off the 3 rivers turns the evening air thick enough to lean on. I'd left the office around 6:40, driven the Parkway east with my windows down, the way I always did after a long shift, and gotten home to our house on Beacon Street in Squirrel Hill a little after 7. The porch light was off, not unusual. Renata liked to save on the electric bill, one of a dozen small habits left over from a childhood where money never stretched far enough. I let myself in, hung my ball cap on the hook by the door, and stood a second in a kitchen that felt too quiet. There was a sandwich on a plate on the counter, wrapped in plastic gone cold. Turkey the way I like it, mustard instead of mayo. Next to it, a note in Renata's handwriting. 5 words. Don't wait up tonight, love. I read it twice, the way you do when 5 words don't quite add up to the woman who wrote them. Renata signed almost everything with a small looping R and a heart underneath. Grocery lists, birthday cards, even the sticky notes she left about the mail. This one had nothing underneath it. I noticed. I let myself believe it didn't mean anything. 19 years teaches you how to read the weight behind 5 words, the way another man might read a whole letter. I ate that sandwich standing at the counter, alone at 11 at night, because some habits are older than the hurt that comes with them. That's when I went looking. Not out of suspicion exactly. More the same instinct that used to tell me a road was wrong before I could say why. Something in that house felt off. The way a room feels off when a door that's always shut is suddenly open a crack. I found it in the bottom drawer of the desk in our spare room, the one I hadn't opened in months. Underneath old warranty cards and tax folders was a manila envelope I didn't remember making. Inside were 5 years of my own bank transfers, laid out in my own handwriting. Money sent quietly to Renata's small marketing business, the year she started it. Money sent quietly to her mother, Corinne, for a roof repair and a furnace her small pension never covered. 5 years of numbers proving everything I'd carried, without once bringing it up at the dinner table. My hands stayed steady reading through it, the kind of stillness you drill into your body until it outlasts whatever's underneath it. It wasn't until I closed that folder that the shake finally caught up with me. In my fingers first, then my jaw, then one long breath before I trusted myself to stand up straight again. And underneath all of it, near the bottom, was a statement for an account with Renata's name on it that I had never seen before. Opened 8 months earlier, balance $46,819. I sat on the edge of that desk a long time, not angry yet, just tired in a way that goes bone deep. 4 days later, I sat across from a lawyer on the 11th floor of a building downtown and had the papers drawn up. Not out of rage, out of exhaustion. A man can only carry a question so long before he stops trusting his own house. What I overheard 6 days after that, at her mother's kitchen table in Homestead, would tell me exactly how long this had really been coming. Sunday dinner at Corinne Voss's house had had a fixture of our marriage since the week Renata and I got engaged. Fried chicken greens simmered low a tablecloth. Corinne pressed every single week, whether company was coming or not. That Sunday, with the lawyer's paperwork still sitting unsigned in my glove compartment, I carried a peach cobbler up the front steps, like I had 100 times before. And I had no idea I was about to hear the sentence that would break something open in me for good. Renata and her mother were in the kitchen, finishing the greens while I set the table in the next room. The door between the two rooms was barely open, just a few inches, and voices carry different in an old house. Soft but clear, if you're standing in the right spot, he's got that same look. Daddy used to have, Renata said. So quiet, I almost missed it. Right before, I'm scared, Mama. I stood there with a stack of plates in my hands and didn't move. The stack suddenly felt heavier than 4 dinner plates should. Behind me, a small kitchen radio hummed low, some gospel choir rising sweet and steady on a song about deliverance, completely unbothered by what was happening 20 feet away. Corinne's answer came back. Easy, unbothered, like she was answering a question about seasoning. You remember to get everything ready, the way I told you last year. Her hands never stopped moving over that pot of greens the whole time she said it. Steady, practiced, like a woman who'd rehearsed, staying calm long before she ever needed to. Last year, not last week, not since I found that statement, a year, whatever this was, it had been in motion for 12 months before I ever opened that drawer. I set the plates down, slow and quiet, and I finished setting that table like nothing had happened, because that's what I'd trained myself to do my whole life. Hold it in, carry it steady, don't let the room see you shake. Dinner was normal. Grace laughter, the same story about the church bazaar Corinne tells every year. I smiled in all the right places. I drove us home along the river, the water black and wide on my left, the skyline lighting up ahead of us, and I gripped that steering wheel so tight. My knuckles ached saying nothing, because I didn't trust my voice not to give me away. My mind went back 2 years to a night I hadn't let myself think about in a long time. I'd been offered a director's position with a firm in Atlanta, nearly double my salary. The kind of job a man spends 20 years building toward. I'd come home so excited, I could barely get the words out, and Renata had looked at me across the table with something close to panic in her eyes. My mother can't manage alone, Marcus, she'd said. You know that, and I'd turned it down. No argument, no resentment. I let her see. I told myself a real man doesn't hold his family's roots against them. I never brought it up again. Sitting in that car, I wondered for the first time whether that sacrifice had ever even registered with her at all. When we got home, Renata went straight to bed, and I sat up with a cup of coffee going cold in my hands. I don't know exactly what made me open her laptop that night. It was sitting right there, unlocked, the way it always was, because we'd never had secrets between us. Or so I thought. Her calendar was full of appointments labeled only with initials P. S. 4 p.m. every other Thursday going back 8 months. I recognized the name eventually from an old insurance card in a drawer we shared. Dr. Paige Sutton, a therapist office on the north side. 8 months of Thursday afternoons. My wife had never mentioned to me. Cash payments, according to a Notes app entry beside each date. No insurance claim, no paper trail a husband might stumble across on a shared account. He'd been careful, in a way that told me this wasn't about privacy. It was about making sure I never found out. 3 nights later, the nightmares came back. I woke up shouting, drenched, my hands still fighting something that wasn't in the room anymore. Renata woke up screaming too, but for a different reason. She wasn't scared of what I was dreaming. She was scared of me. She was out of that bed and out of the house before I had even fully surfaced. I heard her car pull out of the driveway at 2:40 in the morning. She didn't come back for 3 days. I didn't know how long my wife had really been preparing to leave, and I didn't know how long her mother had known everything. The surgery money, the roof, the job in Atlanta, all of it, while sitting across from me at that table every single Sunday, smiling, asking me to pass the greens. What happened 2 weeks later in a hospital room at 3 in the morning would answer both of those questions and open up one I hadn't even thought to ask. Was Corinne protecting her daughter or quietly wrecking a marriage that never got a fair chance? If you think a parent's fear can justify a year of secret planning, you already know someone like Corinne. If you think hiding it from a faithful man is its own kind of betrayal, hold on to that thought, because this story is about to test it. I've spent my whole career keeping other people safe from the thing I never once let happen to myself. So there was something almost funny, in a bitter way, about waking up in a bed at Allegheny General with 2 cracked ribs and a headache like Achamir. Finally on the receiving end of what I'd spent 20 years protecting people from. It happened on a Tuesday. A subcontractor recently let go from a bridge site, agitated and unpredictable, forced his way past a safety checkpoint. I got 3 crew members clear through a service stairwell before site security arrived. In the scramble, I was shoved into a steel railing and went down wrong. Nothing dramatic to look at. Just enough to crack 2 ribs and put me flat on my back for the second time in my life. The first being somewhere I don't talk about, a long way from Pennsylvania. Renata got there around 6 that evening. I heard her before I saw her. That particular sound of shoes moving too fast down a hospital hallway. When she came through the door, her face just broke. She hadn't seen me like that in a long time, maybe ever. I'd always been the one standing at the door with keys in hand, the one who checked the locks twice, the one who made her feel like nothing bad could get through as long as I was standing in front of it. Now I was lying flat under a thin blanket with a tube in my arm, and for the first time in 19 years, she was looking at a man who couldn't protect anybody, including himself. She sat down in the chair beside the bed and cried without trying to hide it. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying, though I didn't understand yet what she thought she had to be sorry for. Her phone buzzed on the rolling table between us. I wasn't trying to look, but the screen lit up bright in that dim room, and the notification sat there long enough for me to read it clearly before she grabbed the phone and turned it face down. Safety plan, reminder, documents ready for attorney review, My pulse didn't spike the way you'd expect. It went the other way, slow, careful. The exact rhythm I used to talk myself into during the worst 30 seconds of a job gone wrong. "Renata," I said, quiet. "What is that?" She was shaking by the time she answered. Her hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup like it was the only steady thing left in the room. "I'm scared. I'm going to end up repeating my mother's history," she said. "I've been scared of it a long time, Marcus." I didn't know how to say it out loud. I lay there and let that sentence settle over me. And underneath the hurt, something else started surfacing. A memory I hadn't let myself examine too closely in 3 years. Corinne's knee surgery, done quietly at a clinic across the river, paid for almost entirely out of a savings account I'd built specifically for emergencies nobody else knew about. I told the billing office not to send a single piece of paperwork to the house. I told Renata her mother's insurance had covered more than it actually had. I did it because I loved that woman like she was my own family, complicated as things sometimes were between us, and because I never wanted Renata carrying the weight of watching her mother struggle to walk, while also worrying about how they'd pay for it. I never told a soul. And now I was learning that while I'd been quietly carrying her entire family without asking for a shred of recognition, she had been quietly building an exit with a lawyer, protecting herself, she said, from a version of me that lived only in her fear, not in anything I had ever actually done. "I'm not your father," I said, finally. My voice came out rougher than I meant it to. "I have never once raised a hand to you." "Not once, I know that," she said. And she meant it. I could see that she meant it, but knowing it in your head and believing it in your body have never been the same thing. Not since she was 7 years old. Her fear had never really been about me. It was about a 7-year-old girl who learned that love could turn dangerous without warning, and who grew into a woman whose body still trusted old alarm bells over 19 years of quiet, unbroken evidence to the contrary. I understood that night that her mother's secrecy wasn't cruelty, it was control. The only kind of safety Corinne had ever been able to teach her daughter actually worked. What Corinne said to me the very next morning, sitting in that same chair while Renata stepped out for water, would turn out to be a truth neither of them had been brave enough to speak in 30 years. Morning in a hospital room feels nothing like night. The machines are the same, the walls are the same, but the light comes in flatter, more honest. That's the kind of morning it was. When Corinne Voss walked through my door, at 9 sharp, dressed like she was heading to a church board meeting, a foil-covered plate of biscuits, balanced in one hand like an offering. She stood at the foot of the bed a long moment, arms crossed, studying me, the way you'd study a photograph you hadn't looked at in years. "I owe you the truth," she said finally, "whether either one of us wants to hear it right now or not. You remind me of him," she said, "Renata's father. Not in what you do. Lord knows you are nothing like that man in what you do, but in the shape of you. Tall, quiet, steady on the surface. That's exactly what he looked like the year before he showed me who he really was. I pushed my daughter away from you because I was terrified of watching her live my life over again," she said. "I have regretted it for 30 years, Marcus, and I have spent the last one making it worse instead of better." For a second, neither of us spoke. Somewhere down the hall, a cartwheel squeaked, rhythmic and ordinary, and I found myself grateful for it. Proof that the rest of the world was still turning, while mine rearranged itself completely. "You knew," I said slowly, "about the surgery money, the roof Atlanta." "I knew all of it," she said. "I knew you paid my knee surgery and told her the insurance covered it. I knew about the roof you had fixed the winter. I never mentioned it was leaking. I knew about Atlanta before you ever turned that job down." I told myself I was protecting her by keeping it quiet, teaching her to stand on her own 2 feet, not lean on a man the way I once leaned on hers, before he taught me exactly what that costs a woman. But I wasn't protecting her, Marcus. I was protecting myself from having to admit I'd been wrong about you from the very start. Renata walked back into the room, right as her mother's hand found mine on top of the blanket, and she stopped dead in the doorway. This wasn't the unraveling of the night before. That had been shock, quiet and cold. This was something warmer and harder in a different way. The sound of a family finally choosing to stop protecting each other from the truth. She didn't ask what we'd been talking about. She just walked over slowly and sat down between us. And then, for the first time in 19 years, my wife told me the truth about her childhood, without stopping herself halfway through. She told me about her father, the charm before the wedding, the control that came after. Nights her mother locked them both in the bathroom of a rented house in Homestead until it was quiet again. She told me about being 7 years old and learning to read a man's mood by the sound of his key in the front door, a skill she never should have had to learn at all. And she told me something I hadn't expected. That growing up, she'd overheard people at church talk about her mother in a certain tone. The tone people say for a woman raising a child alone, like a single mother, was a problem to be managed rather than a person doing something hard and honest. She said she carried that tone with her too, quiet shame stitched into her, long before she ever met me. I built that safety plan because I was scared of a man who has never once given me a real reason to be scared of him, she said, her voice breaking. And I let that fear cost you every ounce of credit you deserved for everything you were quietly doing for this family. Corinne reached over and took her daughter's other hand. For a moment, the three of us just sat there in that bright room. 3 people who loved each other fiercely and had spent years protecting one another from truths that needed saying out loud a long time ago. They released me from the hospital on a Sunday, 3 days later, with orders to rest and not much else. Renata drove me home slow and careful, the way you'd drive somebody made of glass. Neither of us said very much on the way. When we got inside, I saw the suitcase before she could put it away. It was sitting at the back of our closet, half-zipped, clothes folded inside, with a kind of precision that told me it hadn't been packed in a hurry. It had been packed with time to think about it. I've walked past that closet 3 times a day since you got home, she said quietly. I know I should unpack it. I think some part of me isn't ready to touch it yet, because touching it means admitting how close I came to actually using it. I didn't say anything about the suitcase. Instead, I walked to our bedroom, got down slow because of the ribs, and pulled a small fireproof box out from under the bed frame. The kind of thing a careful man keeps without ever expecting anyone else to look inside it. I set it on the bed between us and opened it. Inside were my own records, the same folder of transfers I'd found the week everything started unraveling. But near the bottom, in an envelope I hadn't opened in 3 years, was something I'd nearly forgotten. A card from Corinne, handwritten, dated 3 years back, not long after her knee surgery. Renata picked it up before I could stop her, and I watched her read it, her hands going still halfway through. Thank you for everything you did for me, it said. I mean that more than I know how to say. Please don't let Renata find out it was you. She needs to learn to stand on her own, not lean on a man the way I leaned on hers. Renata set the card down on the bed and sat there a long moment, not crying yet, just very quiet. You paid for her surgery, she said, and you let her ask you to hide it from me for 3 years. I didn't do it, so anybody would owe me anything, I said. I did it because I loved her, complicated as things have been, and because I loved you enough not to make you carry the guilt of not being able to help her yourself. I need to tell you something, she said. That attorney notification you saw on my phone, it wasn't the start of anything. The papers had already been drawn up for almost 2 weeks before you got hurt. I had every intention of filing. Her voice caught. But I stood in that hospital doorway and saw you lying there injured. Because you'd been protecting people the way you always protect everybody. And I couldn't make myself go through with it. I don't fully understand why, I just know I couldn't. I don't know if we can start over from here, I said eventually. I don't know what that even looks like at this point, neither do I, Renata said. But I know I don't want to keep hiding things from you. Not the therapy. Not the fear. Not any of it. What Renata confessed 3 weeks later, sitting across from Dr. Sutton in a session neither of us had planned on needing together, would turn out to be the truth that had been driving everything from the very start. Dr. Page Sutton kept an office on the north side with soft lamplight and a couch too comfortable to encourage anybody to rush through a hard conversation. Renata had been quiet most of the hour, twisting a tissue in her hands, the way she does when she's working up to something she doesn't want to say. "There's something I haven't told either of you," she said, looking at me, then briefly toward the window. Part of that account, the $46,000, some of it was mine, saved slowly over years, but a large part came from my mother. She'd already put a deposit down on an apartment in Cleveland, 2 bedrooms, near her sister. "Okay," I said carefully. "When months ago," Renata said, "before any of this came out, before the hospital." Her hands were shaking now, and here's the part I didn't understand until last week. She never canceled it. Not after everything she said to you in that room. I asked her 3 days ago, and she admitted she'd been putting it off, telling herself she'd get to it. 30 years of being ready to run doesn't undo itself in one hard conversation, Marcus. That's not an excuse. It's just what she told me. And I believe her. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. I felt the strange, hollow calm that comes right before you decide what kind of man you're going to be about something. Corinne's deepest fear was never really about me failing Renata. It was about being powerless again. The way she'd been powerless the year her own husband walked out and left her. With nothing but a mortgage and a small daughter to raise alone, a neighborhood where people whispered about women in her position instead of helping them. Keeping that apartment deposit alive wasn't malice. It was an old survival reflex, the hand that keeps a spare set of keys hidden even after the locks have already been changed. She wanted above everything to make sure her daughter never had to beg permission to leave a man the way she once had to beg to stay. 19 years, every extra shift I never mentioned, every dollar I quietly sent, so her mother's lights stayed on and her knee healed. Right. The job in Atlanta I turned down without a single complaint. All of it had been standing on ground that included somewhere underneath an apartment deposit. Her mother hadn't found the courage to let go of, even after crying in my hospital room and meaning every word of it. "I'm not telling you this to hurt you," Renata said, crying now. "I'm telling you because I finally understand what I almost let happen to us. And I can't carry it alone anymore. Here's what I want you to understand about that moment, because it's the part of this story that took me the longest to make peace with. My first instinct, the old instinct, the one that had kept me quiet for 19 years, was to swallow it, forgive it privately, and never bring it up again. But I had learned something in that hospital bed I wasn't willing to unlearn. Silence hadn't protected my marriage. It had nearly cost me all of it. So that Sunday, Renata and I drove to Homestead together. For the first time in 19 years, we sat across from Corinne Voss as a united front, instead of 2 people she could manage separately. We didn't yell, we didn't need to. Renata laid it out plainly. The apartment, the timeline, the years of secrets kept in the name of protection, and asked her mother one question. "Why haven't you let it go yet?" Corinne didn't have an excuse ready. For the first time in 30 years, she didn't reach for one. "Because saying sorry in a hospital room was the easy part," she said quietly. "Actually letting go of 30 years of being ready to run meant admitting the fear was never really about you, Marcus. It was mine. I kept that apartment as insurance against my own healing. That's a hard thing for a woman my age to say out loud. She canceled the lease that week. She started her own sessions with a counselor near her home. And slowly, Sunday by Sunday, dinner at her house started feeling less like a performance and more like what it was always supposed to be. My wife and I still see Dr. Sutton every other week. Some sessions are hard. Most of them end with us, a little more honest than we walked in. Renata's marketing business, the one my old extra shifts had quietly helped get off the ground years back, finally turned its first real profit. This spring, $8,440 in a single quarter, and she told me about it herself, out loud, at our own kitchen table, instead of keeping it to herself the way we both used to keep everything. I still carry things. That's who I am, and I don't think that changes at 43. But I've learned the difference between carrying weight out of love and carrying it, because I'm too afraid to ask for help. That difference has made all the difference. Some Sundays now, when I drive us to Homestead, Corinne meets us at the door before we even knock, tablecloth already pressed, radio already playing. The same house, the same smells, but nothing in it feels like a performance anymore. It just feels like home, finally, for all three of us. This story is a reminder that the sacrifices we make in silence can end up starving the very relationship we're trying to save. Because a gift nobody knows about isn't remembered. It's just quietly absorbed and forgotten. And it's a reminder that a single mother, doing everything she can to raise a child alone, deserves respect, not whispers, because the fear she passes down usually isn't weakness. It's love that never had the safety to unclench. If there's a debt of love sitting unspoken in your own house tonight, a shift you never mentioned, a bill you quietly paid, a job you turned down without saying, why? Don't wait for somebody to find it by accident in a drawer the way I did. Tonight, before the dishes are cleared, sit down across the table from the person you love most and tell them one true thing you did for them that they never knew about. And if you are a mother or grandmother carrying an old fear, the way Corinne carried hers for 30 years, don't wait for a hospital room to finally say it out loud. I'll call your daughter this Sunday and tell her the real reason behind your worry, not the polished version. Truth spoken over an ordinary supper does more healing than truth confessed. Only after somebody nearly loses everything. Written by a human with AI as a companion, this story hopes to leave you with a warm feeling that even when a family carries old wounds quietly, there are still people and good things standing quietly on your side. Production team's story and screenplay development, character development and visual conceptualization, video scripting and scene adaptation. A passionate team dedicated to bringing this story to life. Declaimer. This story is a work of fiction created for entertainment and educational purposes only. All characters, names, businesses, and events depicted are entirely fictional and do not represent any real person, living or dead, or any actual establishment. Any resemblance to real persons, organizations, or events is purely coincidental. This content is intended to explore themes of human dignity, workplace ethics, and social justice through narrative storytelling. It does not make factual claims about any individual, company, or institution.